Day two of the California Classic just wrapped up, so I am here to talk about all four games that the Sacramento Kings and their two teams have played over the first 2 days of the California Classic. There's been a lot that's been going on in the past really 24 hours. Obviously, DeMar DeRozan signing, that taking a lot of our attention, but then also four games. I've had to watch four Summer League games. I didn't really think about it when I saw the Kings had two separate teams, but man, that's a lot of summer league basketball that I have to watch because the Kings have their pretty much their A team, the Kings 1 team playing in Sacramento and the Kings 2 team, which is pretty much the B team, playing in San Francisco. And so I'm going to start with the Kings 2 team down in San Francisco just because I think there's a little less to talk about. There's less interesting players there because they don't have any guys that are on the Kings roster, whether that be the full roster or on two ways. All of those guys are on the team in Sacramento. But it still is fun to watch that team. And they have guys that play in Stockton, and they have Jordan Ford, who was on a two-way last season. And so they still do have players that are within the Kings organization and the Kings pipeline. And I thought they played really well, especially the offense in the first game, the game that they played against the Lakers, was some of the most fluid offense that I'd ever seen a Summer League team play. Because normally Summer League, these guys, these teams, they don't have a long time to practice together. Sometimes there's some bad shot selections. There's some guys playing some hero ball, guys playing hard, but they're trying to earn their spot. And it doesn't always come together as a team. But it was nice to see. I thought the team play was really, really good. The ball movement and the player movement looked really good. And I think it speaks to something bigger about the Kings organization, like the front office and the coaching staff. Since Monte McNair has come in and since Mike Brown has come in, they've implemented a style of play from the top to the bottom so that even, guys in Stockton, when they come in to the organizational pipeline, they know what's expected of them. They're going to play in a similar system to that of the big club so that when and if they make it to the NBA, then it's not a big adjustment and they know what's expected of them. And so I think we see that here. And so, it helps that some of these guys have played in Stockton and so they know what's expected of them. And I think that's a way that an organization can really take advantage of the G League and take advantage of the two-way spots they have, take advantage of undrafted players or second-round picks and developing them. And the Kings have been doing much better lately when it comes to developing those types of guys than they did before. I feel like, in the 2010s, we can say they just never really had those stories of the guys going undrafted and coming into the Kings system and being developed. And so we've seen that more lately with, your Keon Ellis or even other guys that haven't quite made it all the way, but still have shown more promise. And so I liked what I saw from the Kings 2 team in San Francisco. Adonis Arms, he was absolutely cooking. And he was good in both of these games, but especially the first game that he played, scoring 32 points. And that guy, he's athletic, he's long. That's something the Kings have, I feel like, really focused on here. They brought in a lot of guys with length, especially when you look past like the guys that were already within the organization. They've gone out and found a bunch of guys with length. Adonis Arms, one of those guys, a great name and a great body. He looks comfortable handling the ball. He was comfortable creating his own shot. He was getting space on step backs in the mid-range and looked really comfortable shooting those. He was just getting to his spots. He could attack inside. The way he kind of attacks, it reminds me of Giannis, the way he dribbles the ball and the way he just kind of like he sets up. It almost looks like he's kind of close to carrying the ball, but he's just like this massive dude with, massive muscles dribbling the ball at full speed towards the rim, but he's actually in control. And he showed playmaking in game 2. He didn't score as much, but I thought his playmaking was really good when the other team, when the Heat, they sent bodies at him inside, and he did a good job distributing. So I'm really liking what I'm seeing from Adonis Arms defensively as well. I thought he was pretty good, and he's a threat vertically in transition. And so he's really been the standout from that team in San Francisco. Jordan Ford has been solid as well. We know what he can do. We know he can score the ball. Love the way that he can finish around the rim with floaters and using the glass at his smaller size. And so he's been solid like we know he can be. But then some other guys, Aimaq is a big man that can pass the ball. Like that's the one thing that pops for him. That guy has vision. He can execute the passes really well. I lost count of how many good passes he made. The other parts of his game are a little questionable. He's a really big dude, strong dude, but his finishing around the rim a little bit questionable. His defense a little bit questionable. But he was pushing the ball up the court in transition and finding guys. So his playmaking definitely his strongest attribute that we've seen thus far. And then Caver and Antoine Davis, they're just buckets. Antoine Davis shooting a ridiculous clip from three, but those guys can just score the ball. It's going to be interesting to see who makes the Vegas team because we saw, I think it was the Raptors came out with their Vegas roster and it had Drew Timme on it. And Drew Timme is playing on the Sacramento team right now. And so it's like, okay, so we're not keeping him on the Vegas roster, I guess. So that means someone else, is coming from the San Francisco roster. It'll be interesting to see how they kind of combine these rosters to make the Vegas roster. But I think Adonis Arms has definitely earned his spot from this roster. Then moving on to the guys in Sacramento, the guys more that we know and the guys that are probably going to make an impact next season for the Kings or are most likely to. Keon Ellis was the main guy I was watching from this roster just because he's kind of getting the Keegan Murray assignment a little bit. It's a little different. Keon's not as established, but still a guy who was starting games for the Kings last season, playing in Summer League. And so I wanted to see him, average around 20 points per game. He scored 20 in the first one. His three-point shot was falling. He scored 10 early. In the second game, he scored 13 points. His three-point shot wasn't really dropping. And then he hesitated on one. In the second half, he passed up a three, and you could see Doug Christie on the bench was pissed. Like he said it after the first game. He said Keon's got to keep shooting, and that was when Keon was making his shots. And so then Keon stopped making his shots in the second game, and Doug Christie was noticeably pissed that he passed up that shot. So he's just got to keep shooting because it was an open look. But what I liked from Keon outside of that, we know he can shoot the three. He's shown that for a couple seasons now. But he was getting to that mid-range. He looked super comfortable handling the ball and navigating around screens. He was getting to that mid-range game. He was getting to a turnaround mid-range game, which was interesting. He didn't show a lot in terms of like going full speed at the rim and really trying to finish at the rim or play make out of attacking the rim. He was focused on getting to that mid-range. And, it worked. He was knocking down those shots. He looked comfortable doing it. And so that's a good sign when, he's going to be attacking closeouts with the main team. And so he can get into that mid-range, step in and knock shots down. I do want to see him attack the rim a little bit more and see kind of what he can do in terms of finishing and in playmaking when that defense collapses on him. But I think what we're seeing so far from Keon is good. The defense is still there, so that's not a problem. Colby Jones was definitely a guy I was keeping my eye on, and he had a bit of a rough first game, I would say. He wasn't knocking shots down, but I thought he kind of grew into the game, and his playmaking got better, and he made some really nice passes that didn't even get converted, and he still ended with 5 assists, I think it was. So the playmaking, the ball handling looked solid from him. But really, it's going to be about that three-point shot. Even in the second game, he started off pretty poor, and then he got some confidence. He got to a couple floaters inside off of some pretty nice moves, and he was still distributing the ball, and he did a lot defensively, especially in the second half of the second game. He was all over the place defensively and rebounding the basketball, and so that's good to see. But he shot 33%, I think it was, in Stockton last year. He's got to be able to develop that shot. He passed up a few shots. He was always cutting to the rim instead of spotting up from three when the defense was off him. And that just crowded the paint a few times. Like, you got to know when to cut and when to spot up for three. And his instinct is just always cut, because he doesn't want to shoot that three. And there were so many times where he caught it at the perimeter and would just immediately attack when he was open. And so For him to get playing time, it's gonna come down to that 3-point shot because I think he is good at other things. He has good decision making in terms of passing, good rebounding, good defense. And so, yeah, it's gonna come down to that 3-point shot. Mason Jones, he came out and he set the tone in game one, I thought. He's picking up full court. He talked about how Doug Christie said that the next level of his game is on the defensive side of the ball and that he has to pick up 94 feet. And he committed to that. He looked so energetic. He's lost like 50 pounds since he got to Stockton. And so he just looks fully committed and he looks confident when he gets on the ball. In Stockton, like he was the guy with the ball in his hands. And that's carrying over here. He just looked confident. He looks confident pulling up off the dribble from three. No matter where the defense is, no matter how deep he is from three, he'll pull up and he's making them. He's just so energetic. He'll drive the ball hard. And sometimes it results in some turnovers. He gets a little out of control with the ball. But I think overall it's pretty good. His playmaking has been really good. And so he's definitely someone that's going to be interesting on a two-way contract. You know, he's older. He's 25. He's got to make his mark now. But it's a good start so far for him. With Devin Carter going out injured, there might be opportunity for him to compete with a guy like Jordan McLaughlin for minutes. Isaac Jones, another new two-way player for the Kings. He was starting at the 4, and that was something I was wondering coming in. Like, is he a 4? Is he a 5? So they're starting him at the 4. I think he shot 14 three-pointers all of last season in college. And in the first game, he came out, he was firing from deep. He looked confident. The stroke looked good. He didn't make one, though. But so they had him out there playing the 4. He looked mobile. He looked bouncy, athletic, looked confident, had some good cuts. In the second game, he did end up knocking down, I think, his only 3 of the game. And he also had a really nice drive and poster. Other than that, he was a bit invisible in the game. He had like those 2 good moments. And, you know, I thought the rebounding maybe could have been better in that second game. And it's still kind of like, what is his role going to be? What types of players is he going to guard? Like, is he going to guard the bigger guys or can he guard more of the mobile wings? I feel like they want him to guard the wings and they want him to play on the perimeter more and then cut in. But I think he's just got to get used to the role because it seems like they're asking him to play a role that he didn't really play in college, at least his last year in college. So he's definitely intriguing with his body type and his athleticism. And so we'll just have to keep an eye on him, keep an eye on how that 3-point shot is, because that's obviously going to be important. Isaiah Crawford, another new two-way guy. I thought he looked good, especially in the second game, attacking closeouts, getting to his spots in the mid-range, hitting floaters. He had some really nice defensive moments, staying in front of guys. But he seems like slightly small for the wing stopper that he's supposed to be. Like there were times where he was getting out muscled for the rebound. He just seems like a little shorter than I want him to be. I don't know. I don't know how to explain that. Like I don't know what I expected, but he just seems a little short. But he definitely had some good moments defending on the perimeter. We didn't really get to see too much of that 3-point shot, and so we'll definitely have to see that going forward. And then Boogie Ellis came in, and what I noticed about Boogie Ellis was, like, he's small, he's 6'1", but his defense is actually pretty good. Like, he's a pest. He is going to get right up into the opposing players. He's going to go for steals all over the court. He looked good pushing the pace, knocking down threes, confident, shooting the ball. And I really liked what I saw from Boogie Ellis, just as a shooter, but also at his size, what he was doing defensively. And I don't remember a bad play from him. His size is always going to make it tough for him to really make it in the NBA. But I think these first 2 games have been a good start for him. And then just looking at some other guys, Drew Timme, actually surprisingly, has looked really good defensively. I thought maybe at first, like, oh, it's just against, you know, these Chinese players that aren't really athletic. But then he kept doing it against the Spurs, where he was blocking shots. His rebounding was very, very good. We know he's got that touch around the rim, but he was pushing the ball up the court, pushing the pace by himself. And so not that he'll, you know, get a spot on the Kings or, you know, like I said Sounds like he's playing with the Raptors team in Vegas, but he looked really good. And then the backup center, Joe Lual-Acuil, I think. He looked really good as well. The Kings threw him a million alley-oops, and he never dunked them. He always tried to lay them up, or he'd catch them, come down, then try to go back up. So maybe he's not quite that springy five, but he just felt like he was always in the right spots. He was always running the floor, trying to leak out for easy buckets. He was getting in there, getting rebounds, finishing up plays at the rim. So that was a guy that I knew nothing about coming in, and he's looked good so far. I don't think we really need to see any more of Keon Ellis in summer league. I think we're good. I think we got what we needed. He looks confident. But Colby Jones is really the main guy that I want to see have an offensive kind of explosion game coming up here. We just got to see that 3-point shot go down. And I want to see Isaac Jones really get involved in the game and really assert himself into the game coming up, because he's definitely an interesting player. Both Kings teams have one more game each, and so I believe it's the 9th that the Sacramento team plays, and the 10th that the San Francisco team plays. And the San Francisco team is playing the Warriors for the Mitch Richmond Trophy. I don't know, that's kind of weird to me, especially since it's like we got our B team there. Apparently the Warriors are bringing in Brandon Pajemski and Trace Jackson Davis to like compete for that. And I don't know, it just seems like really random. Why is it in San Francisco? Why is it just one game? I don't know. It's just like a weird thing, but whatever. I'm probably going to wait until after that second game to recap both of the games together. And so that will be Wednesday night, the 10th. And then after those two games, we'll see the Vegas roster and we'll head off to Vegas. But so far, I liked what we've seen from the guys that matter, I guess, in your Keon Ellis, Colby Jones, Mason Jones, Isaac Jones, all the Joneses, and then Isaiah Crawford, and even Boogie Ellis. And so we'll see who kind of continues to step up as we continue on in Summer League. So anyways, that is it for this episode of The Real Report, and I will be back in a few days to wrap up the California Classic. Peace.